Hello, ladies and gentlemen from around the world. Welcome to Joe Talks, the hunt for the greatest movie ever. We're doing it a little bit different this time because for the ultimate crack more so than anything else, I've decided that we're going to put out a live episode because I want to do a bit of a tester, a bit of a feeler because this might be how I do it down the road. And I thought the best time to do it is when you have the most handsome man in the whole world at your disposal. The real Rick Shepherd, but the regular just Rick Shepherd. Rick, thanks so much for coming on. How are you feeling on this beautiful Tuesday morning? No, it's soon to be Tuesday morning for me because it's 6 minutes to midnight in Sweden where I'm living. But it's 6 minutes to six. So you're still, in the height of an after. Or well, are you? Is it evening time if it's 6 o'clock?
Yeah. So it's almost we're getting on to 6 o'clock here, but
Mm.
I'm feeling good, man. The afternoons are kind of a special time for me because
Mm.
it's where I do like a lot of my creative work, like a lot of my writing.
Yes.
It's where I take the time to watch some movies if I'm feeling the need, or
Yeah.
also auditioning, things of that nature. So this is like really my time to kind of just decompress a little bit and get some
Yeah.
creative work done. In those outlets.
Yeah, well, speaking of creative work, great little through note for that. The last time we had you on in one of the special Lost episodes, I don't mean like an episode where we discussed Lost. I mean an episode which which is Lost, that we never got to put out. We were discussing your plans going
hmm
forward. That you
hmm
were had a few things lined up, and you like things were kind of working out for you. That was a couple of months down the line, and
Yeah.
you have been a busy. It's after midnight. It's
Yeah.
after 9 o'clock. I can swear you've been a busy motherfucker the last little while.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been busy, man. The with the quarantine going on last year, myself with my creative partners, it really gave us an opportunity to do this kind of full time.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
really put all the time and effort that we had, which was a good amount of time with everything shut down in New York City, into our creative works. And we were going into developing a television show to pitch to networks, which we were able to do the entire pilot script, and we shot a
mm,
trailer for it. And we're actually shooting a little bit more content for that next month to go along with our pitch package. And we had also, I'm not sure if we discussed, I was developing another show, actually, a sort of like
no,
thriller and horror show that we were shooting at Ryan's Daughter, which is, for those of you who don't
yes,
know, it's an Irish,
yes,
yeah, it's an
yeah,
old school Irish pub on the Upper East Side. And I have a connection there. And basically, I was very confident that we would be able to film something there if we had
mm,
created or developed a project. So I had, got in touch with the owner, who's a good friend of mine, and basically had told him this idea that myself and one of my creative partners, Sarang Sharma, had come up with. And the whole basis behind that was the bar was closed for a good amount
yeah,
of time, and then when it did reopen, it was still closed a couple days a week. And basically, we had this amazing space, kind of at our disposal. At least we were confident that it was there.
mm,
And
mm,
so we just completely developed this entire show based in this bar. And we had plans to shoot it there as well. And we
yeah.
actually were able to get in there. We worked something out with the ownership, and we were able to get in there and film the entire first pilot episode of the
What?
show. Yeah, which was
Oh my
awesome.
God! How
Yeah, it
long did
was
it take you to
definitely.
film that?
Oh well, so the first day was about, I want to say, I think it was like 8 to 10 hours
Yeah.
on set, and the next day that we went on was about 8 hours as well. And we had to kind of manipulate our time because the bar was going, or all the changes in New York
Mm,
City were
mm,
happening in
mm.
terms of like the service industry, and one places could operate. And here's just a thing about filmmaking, or a thing that happens when you're trying to reach a goal, is we actually had a little bit of a setback, unfortunately. Somebody in our crew had unfortunately lost our footage for an entire first day of filming. Yeah, it
Oh
was
my
um,
God!
it was a
Oh
major
my
setback.
God!
Yeah, major setback. And I can't go fully without blame either, because myself and my partner at the end of the day are executive producers and
Mm,
creators. And
mm,
while you do entrust people to do their
mm,
job,
yeah.
when you are kind of the head of a project, you need to do your due diligence and, you know, check in and double check and triple check. And the thing that I've been finding out about producing specifically is, you know, I'm not a micromanager. You know, I'm pretty good at, you know, delegating and working with people, especially in the arts, because I've kind of been, you know, a bit all over in terms of film sets. So yeah, you know, it's finding that in between of giving people the professional courtesy to do their job, but at the same time making sure that the job is done at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, that being said, we were able to pivot very, very well. The second day of shooting that we had was just one individual at the bar that we were shooting, and I guess I'll go into, I guess, a little bit of the story. So basically, it takes place in New York City, and it's post like general pandemic that happened. And essentially, at this point, a good amount of the city had been vaccinated. And if you didn't get vaccinated, then you kind of turned into think like I Am Legend type of monster.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, and the way that we structured the show that we're really excited about is, you know, the opening scene is this guy running down the street, and you're following him at the New York City street, and he runs into this bar, and there's 2 floors to this bar, and he goes straight up to the second floor, and there's a group of about 7 individuals there, and then it cuts, and then it flashes back actually to one person in the bar. So each episode flashes backwards to how each one of those 7 people had gotten in the bar in the first place, you know, traversing through this like infected, you know, New York City. And basically there's like it's one of those like shows where there's like a whole lot of questions. And the last episode is when you finally find out all the answers to the different cahoots and everything. So yeah. And the second day of filming, so the way that we had scheduled it was there was one day of filming with, you know, a little bit of all 7 people. And then we brought in a couple more characters. And then the second day of filming all revolved around one person, because that was a big, you know, part of the first episode. And when we found out that we lost the first day of footage, what we did was we had actually took the footage from the second day and made an entire short film out of it, which actually showcases, it showcases kind of this individual in this bar during this time. And it turned out really well. We've been editing it, you know, for the last couple months. And we finished it up a couple weeks ago, and we're actually still going to pitch the show with, you know, with the original cast in mind, as well as we have the entire first season developed down to every episode. We have the pilot script up as well, and then we have, you know, the short film, and then come to things like, you know, one pager, which, you know, for television pitching purposes is basically just one page with like the plot, the synopsis, like themes, your characters, ideal characters for who you want to cast. So we were able to really come back from kind of a huge inconvenience. But to be honest, it was literally just one of those moments, which is, okay, we learned a lot of lessons, and we obviously can't give up. So how do we make the best case scenario out of this, you know, kind of grim situation?
Absolutely, and fair dues to you. That is incredible ingenuity to make so much out of something that would honestly like cause a lot of people to just jump out the tallest window possible. So fair play to you. And I've one thing to give you a note on. Executive producers don't have to take the blame; they just have to find the right person to blame. So, but that's super fantastic, and I can't wait to keep like I constantly on Instagram all the wonderful things you're doing. But I really am excited. I think it's a wonderful premise, and I think it's something we can look. I'm really looking forward to one day seeing it in whatever capacity it comes out in. So really, congratulations on just staying, but not only just staying active, but being like really positively active as well. So fair dues to you.
Yeah, we were able to do good with it, and we have we got a write up at for Shipping Media that one of our associate producers wrote up an interview, and it has our teaser on there. And if you're interested in looking at that, it's actually a link in my bio that takes you to the press release.
Perfect. Yes. So at Real Rick Shepherd on Instagram. So make sure to check that out, guys. Well, not immediately, right after you finish listening to this. But definitely remember it. But speaking of films, you are a film fan. You are a film actor. You are a film.
But I love it.
Yeah, when you were, you know, a lot younger than you were today, growing up, when you were, you know, instead of being a real Rick Shepherd, you were a real young Rick Shepherd. Jeez, that's a dad joke.
I'll
If I
take
could
it,
believe
man.
it.
I'll take it. You
Yeah.
pull it off, brother.
What was your favorite movie growing up?
Honestly, it was, you know, when I was, and I would say probably this is when I was maybe like 12 or 13 when I
Mm.
saw this. But it really stuck was Scream, was Wes Craven's Scream. Yeah,
I look.
yeah.
I am.
It was,
That's. But like, what really? Like, okay.
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I saw Scary Movie before I saw Scream. I can't even remember the first time I saw Scream. I think I kind of missed the boat on that because look, I'm a fan of any great film. I know Scream is a great film, a great film series,
Mhm.
but I'm not a horror guy. Even though I know it's more than just that. It's like a picture of the genre. But like at 12 years old, I would be no like. How did you manage to watch Scream at 12 years
Oh,
old?
oh, it scared the shit out of me.
Good.
It
I
was,
should hope
I
so.
think, I think it was just one of those. Found them. We used to go to garage sales all the time, and I don't. I
Yeah.
honestly, I assume it was probably through a garage sale or maybe already in like an extensive like VHS library that we had.
Mm.
I got my hands on it somehow. Needless to say, my parents wouldn't have been very happy if they knew I was watching that. But the reason that stuck to me, and the other one that comes to mind is actually I saw it when I was about let's see, 11 or 12 as well, the original It.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and that's why I have such an affinity for horror movies, and why those two stuck with me is because they scared the shit out of me, and they kind of scarred me a little bit. But
Yes.
I had such a fascination with how films could really affect me in that way. I remember after I saw Scream, every time that I heard like the door knock, or every time that I
Yeah.
took a step out on the porch, I always made sure to lock the door, because in the movie somebody sneaks through the front door while they're
Yeah.
on the porch, things of that
So
nature.
yeah.
And it,
So I
uh,
taught you to be vigilant. That's a
yeah,
good sign for a movie. Now I will
yeah,
say it. Okay, it. If you ever watch it, like especially the 1990 version, it is the
mm,
campus least terrifying, most hilarious thing ever put to camera.
right.
But I know everyone was terrified of it growing up. Another one I
Mhm.
I ignored. Sorry, I actually have a comment here, but like I would appreciate Paul Nealon from Irish Fan TV. Yup. Thanks, Paul. Greatly appreciate it. Tony Martial FC. Messi is the GOAT, by the way. Okay. Thanks very much for following me over here, Tony. Tony, for that one. We're talking film, but I had a discussion earlier on, but sure, if you want to say that. But Sarah Shines, Goonies scared me for life. It in a second place. Goonies. Do you know
Ooh,
what? I
okay.
had a discussion with someone. I'd never seen Goonies. I think it was on episode 3 with Aoife Morrison that I discussed Goonies. I'm still to this day never seen Goonies, but I know people who live by it, and it's a movie I regret not seeing growing up. But
Hmm.
I've never heard anyone ever call it scary.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's one of the cool things about movies in general, is that a lot of them have tension. A lot of movies have tension.
Mm,
That's what creates value in certain
mm,
circumstances. And, tension can easily lead to fear.
yeah,
And horror movies just capitalize off that. That's what the entire genre is about, is capitalizing off the fear that people might have. But I think that it's kind of cool that fear in general is a bit thematic across the cinema spectrum. So,
mm.
I could definitely see somebody being a little spooked by Goonies. If somebody came across and said that they were freaked out by Fievel, it'd take me a second to think about it. But, I guess like as a kid, there are some spooky moments in there too. That stuff
It's so
sticks with me.
true. It's so true. I've never seen scared of. If you're still watching, Sarah, tell us what exactly scared you about Goonies, because I'm very, very interested in that. I can understand it because fucking clowns. Who the fuck likes clowns? But Goonies, I haven't seen it, so I can't judge it. But fair play to you, Sarah, and commenting anyway. And I would say definitely Scream is terrifying, and it growing up definitely was as well. So two nice, scary ones to go for, and
Yeah.
and definitely shaped your life too.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, 100%.
but we keep going. Okay, Rick. Obviously, you were here for the bracket 1957 to 1959,
Mhm.
with the movies around the world in. Oh wait, blenders plus hands. I don't know what that means.
Oh,
It's
basically in this scene, they have a blender with the top off, and somebody's
yeah.
taking someone's hand like slower and closer to the blades while or it's their
Oh,
face, I think, maybe too. I'm not too sure. I haven't seen the film in a while, but definitely the slow creep to and descent into the blades.
Okay, that's pretty terrifying. And the locked up brother in the basement. This sounds very scary movie. I'm never going to watch this now. Jesus Christ, I've gone completely off it now. But Rick, we have you here for the bracket 1957 to 1959, which is Around the World in 80 Days, Gigi, and Bridge on the River Kwai. Watching these movies, did you have an enjoyable experience across the board? Obviously, it's originally the films you were asked to watch that in the last episode was Driving Miss Daisy, Silence of the Lambs, and Dances with Wolves. Like there's such a kind of huge shift between cinema in the 50s to the 90s, but like across the board, was it an enjoyable experience sitting down and watching these movies?
Yeah, it was. I think that there are certain, themes or structure styles in the 50s that, have kind of escaped us a little bit, or if they have, they've been more manipulated now to be more popular to like an audience, especially because like in the 50s with that kind of technology, a large part of discussion when coming to like filming movies or like viewing movies or making movies is, the whole like, oh, look, we can film. Like, look how cool this is, sort of thing, and it's just like an appreciation for the technology that they had back then. So it can definitely be a bit more slow. And I think that you have to look at it a bit differently, right? Not necessarily as slow, but more like an appreciation for things. Like, that's something that I say about like, for instance, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is that, some people saw it was slow. I thought it was more like a commentary on the era, which is like, again, look how cool this is that we can do this. But it was so impressive what Tarantino did because he completely formed the aesthetic of that time period. But, in the 50s, it was cool. And it's also like always awesome watching things that, no longer exist. From clothing styles to, the way that people act to, buildings and aesthetic and things of that nature.
I completely agree with you on everything you just said there. You have to kind of reset your brain to like a different time in cinema, and there's like that's a few issues I've had with the movies, but like going back here, and that's why I have to have that understanding as well. I will say one of these movies. There's three films, all right? One of them is wrong in every capacity of existing. It should never have been made, and it cringes me to my bones that it won Best Picture. The other one is very long, very boring, very dull, very like, aren't we great? This certain nationality. Look how smart we are. And then there's one which is then there's one that's an absolute masterpiece. Made by a true genius director and with incredible performances. We're going to find out very soon what they are, and I really, 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 really hope, really, really hope, really, really, really hope you don't put one movie in particular as your first choice. Okay, I can live with one of them being first choice somewhat somehow, but like one of them has to be number one. Okay, we'll see what way it goes. Okay, I'm not, it's your choice, your choice. But if one of these movies is your number one, I don't think it is. I think we're safe. I hope we're safe. But if that film is Rick Shepherd, real Rick Shepherd,
that's when I'm actually get disconnected from the
podcast. Rick's head was disconnected from his body to see. But yeah, we'll get straight stuck into it. So for the bracket, 1957 to 1959, Rick, what's your middle name? I know it's Valentino, isn't it? There's Valentino there somewhere, isn't there?
No, it's Todd actually.
Oh, Rick Todd, yes.
Yeah.
There is Valentino.
I go by my mom's last name, but because Rick Shepherd's my stage name, but my birth last name is Minnelli, which is my father's last name.
Minnelli. That's it. I knew it. Okay, not Valentino. Sorry, I got a bit too much there. That was probably a bit too Italian. That could possibly be even considered as xenophobic, just going for the most Italian name I could possibly think.
So good.
Oh, actually, Sarah Shine has an interesting question. I'm just going to go to this first, since we have someone watching and someone giving comments. That's what it's here for. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was awesome. The last scenes were traumatic, but what else would you expect? 100%. How important is the movie soundtrack to you? So that's quite an open question for a soundtrack for me anyway. Some directors is absolutely vital. I think an Edgar Wright movie, I think his soundtrack is as important as his dialogue. I think it's all fitted together, especially in stuff like Baby Driver and Hot Fuzz. And then most of his movies, actually. And then you have a John Williams score as well. Whenever that's put in, it's for Spielberg. It's as vital as anything else. But I wouldn't call that's a score, I guess. But soundtrack, Tarantino, Edgar Wright are masters of the soundtrack. James Gunn as well.
I was about to say,
Rick,
like James Gunn, he kind of re-innovated some songs just with Guardians of the Galaxy 1.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
Like he's so good at play. He's so good at matching scenes with songs that don't necessarily fit at first. I mean, of course, everyone, hooked on a feeling with Chris Pratt running around. I mean, because like normally, if we're gonna go with like an action sci-fi, stereotypically you'd think that you're gonna have some under some like low undertones with some action noises and some and some quick cuts and things of that nature. But he really kind of went the opposite with that. Somebody else who's really good at doing that as well is Zack Snyder. He'll have like guys and girls cocking guns and loading weapons and everything, and he'll put some orchestra in the background, and he'll throw some like slow motion and and some explosions in about 5 seconds after that, and it's like polar opposite sound to what's actually being filmed. But it actually comes out working very nicely for him a good amount of times. And then you got people, of course, like Christopher Nolan, who just has these like beautiful spectacles of scenes, and then he'll throw somebody like Hans Zimmer under there, or Scorsese does that, where it is more along the lines of what you think, but it creates such an amazing scene because of that, because it fits so well. It's just, you see different puzzle pieces kind of fitting together, and granted, movie soundtrack isn't necessarily the first thing that I think about. I do think about it when looking back on a film, but I will say if the movie soundtrack doesn't fit the movie, then it's one of the first things I notice.
Again, we're on the exact same page with that. And I would also say a certain trailer edited to a song made me maybe think this movie was going to be like an absolute game changer. If anyone looks at, I think it's the first trailer, but it's just check out Bohemian Rhapsody Suicide Squad trailer. And that led me to believe this movie was going to be incredible. I was so hyped for it, and then it was just a piece of shit. And speaking of pieces of shit, Rick Todd Valentini, no, what is it? Vanelli, sorry.
Yeah.
Rick Todd Vanelli Shepherd for the bracket 1957 to 1959. Your third place goes to?
It was Gigi.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. My heart was in my chest, but thank you. Okay. Gigi, weary of the conventions of Parisian society, a rich playboy and a youthful courtesan in training enjoy a platonic friendship which may not stay platonic for long. It won 21 awards in film festivals around the world, nominated for a further 9. It, I think, won 9 Oscars, actually, at the Oscars. Do you want to take a stab at one of them? Bar Best Picture, and I'll just read out the rest because there are too many.
Let's see. I don't know. Did it get a Best Director?
It did, yes. It won Best Picture, obviously. Best Director, Vincent. I think it's... Well, yeah, I thought it was Vincent Minnelli, but there's an E at the end, so Vicente Minnelli, who is Liza Minnelli's father. Best Writing Screenplay based on material from another medium, Alan J. Lerner. Best Cinematography, Color, Joseph Ruttenberg. Best Art Direction and Set Decoration, Black and White or Color, William A. Horning. E. Preston Ames. Henry Grace, F. Kyo Gleason. Best Costume Design, Cecil Beaton. Best Film Editing, Adrienne Faison. Best Musical Original Score, Frederick Lowe and Alan J. Lerner for the song Gigi. And Best Music Score for Musical Picture, Andre Previn. A couple of fun facts about a bad movie. When Alan J. Lerner met Leslie Carson in London to discuss the film with her, he was surprised to discover that, Caron, not Carson, to discover that Caron, who was of French birth, had become so immersed in English culture that she had lost her French accent. The day after the movie won 9 Oscars, MGM telephone operators were instructed to answer the phones all day by saying, "Hello, MGGM." That's such a bad joke to do. Yeah, the cat in the
How many
movie.
people did that have to pass through before they were like,
Oh,
"God, are we sure this sounds like a great idea?" Like,
yeah.
I agree.
It definitely was just like the top dog saying, "Do it," and they're like, "Well, we can't
Yeah.
argue."
Well,
Yeah,
can't say no.
we can't say no. The cat in the movie reacted violently whenever it was in a scene with Leslie Caron, but director Vincent Minnelli insisted on having that particular cat, so it would be heavily drugged. This is especially obvious during the "Say a Prayer for Me Tonight." So before we go into detail about this movie, had you ever seen it before? Have you ever heard about it before?
I had heard about it before. I hadn't viewed it personally. It just I never really had too much interest. I do have a long list of movies I know I should watch, and I
Yeah,
slowly chip away at those every once in a while. So I'm sure that I would have gotten to this eventually at some point, maybe even years from now.
yeah,
But yeah, I'm glad that I watched it. I do enjoy watching pieces of cinema just so I can discuss whether or not I like them,
yeah,
especially if they've won
absolutely.
like a lot of awards. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not like a natural contrarian. However, I do have my opinions, and I like to hear others' opinions, especially if they think something differently. And
absolutely,
and
absolutely. But for me, anyone who thinks this movie is, I don't say it's bad. I just feel like it's wrong. Do you know what I mean? I just feel like
yeah,
every message in this movie is kind of cringeworthy. Like the opening song, for anyone who doesn't know it, the opening song is it called "What I Love About Little Girls"? That might be a bit too on the nose. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to Google.
I
Um,
know, I know the last song. I think he was saying, "I'm like thankful for little girls" or something like that, or like
thank heaven for little girls
"Thank
is the
heaven for
opening
little girls."
song because
Yes.
I was watching this. I don't know if I ever knew about this movie. I think before I watched it, I was like, I think this is a musical, but I don't remember it coming up in my life. I don't remember anything about it. And like I grew up in
Hmm.
a big musical family, and especially from my dad, and I was in musical society. So I was watching this, waiting for a song to come up that I knew, and I have never heard a song from this. I don't think I've heard a song from this performed anywhere. If had never stuck with me, but like I was sitting there looking at it, and the opening song is "Thank Heaven for Little Girls." I was like, this is so wrong,
It's wild.
and
It's wild.
it's absolutely wild. And the thing is, like, maybe if a couple of years ago, if I'm watching this, I'd be laughing at it because it's like innocent. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
But then you look at like a lot of the topics that get discussed, and the fact that a lot of producers back then were not only like sexually abusing
Yeah.
women, but they're sexually abusing kids. I was like, these people aren't innocent, and you're like, this movie is being
Yep.
made. I'm like, this is purely being made for them?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's
feel,
kind
yeah,
of
you know,
Yeah, because a lot of people probably play it off to that it represents, the French bourgeoisie kind of time
oh,
period and
yeah,
that
yeah,
like sort of society and whatnot. But also knowing what we know now about that time period and people in those positions, it is kind of
mm,
like, all right, well, like, does this also kind of maybe reflect who's coming out with these, or like who's approving of these, or yada yada yada,
yeah.
and that's where it kind of gets a little bit icky.
Because exactly when it's like this one best picture, okay, it won best picture,
Mhm.
and it's about a rich, like I said, playboy. I think he's in his 40s, who falls in love with a 16 or 17-year-old, and they get married, but they're mates first. But like he's clearly grooming her, and she is
Yeah,
being built to be groomed for to be the mistress, which I didn't pick up until
yeah.
afterwards. But she's being groomed to be the mistress of like wealthy people, and you're like,
Hmm.
and he saves her from this, and then he has a song that's somewhere near the end where he's like, "Oh, I love her, but she's so young, but that's
Yeah, that
okay."
one was yeah, that one
Yeah,
was interesting where he's coming, it's the whole like, I'm gonna come up with negative things about this individual so I don't fall in love with them. But when those
yeah,
like negative things about that individual is like, because he even says like she's playing with her little toys at one point. And when
oh,
that happens, like it's those lines that really show how like young she is that sticks. But then
yeah,
like the opposite side of the coin is just the whole, well, like, that's a reflection of the society at that point. So is it necessarily like, blaming the character? Or I mean, it's just like there's
yeah,
so many different conversations that come into play about it. You know, and it's just a whole like topic of discussion now when viewing, you know, older films that had, you know, a different standard is, okay, so should I put my hat on that says I'm going to view this as if, you know, I'm in the 1950s or even, you know, in the 1990s before, you know,
Yeah.
we gained so much knowledge, or am I going to like watch this now and take it for what it is? I had a little bit of both, you know, because I can't sit there and not cringe at the fact that somebody's talking about, you know, oh, she's sitting there playing with her little toys, and then a minute later he's like, but I'm in love with her. You know, it's
So that's just
it's
fine.
kind of hard.
And I completely understand where you're coming from as well. It's like this is based on a novel, and and this happened to people. Do you know what I mean? It happened that these were real people. Like I don't know. I'm not saying this is, in particular is a true story, but it could be. I don't think it is, but it could be. But like it's based on a novel where these situations where people were courtesans which were raised to be mistresses did exist, and I guess they're showing that. But I'm also like, I don't care. That's not a thing anymore. Like, you know, I think that's something I can. Yeah.
And it puts about how wrong they were at that time period, which they were. It shows that, you know, because they're coming at it when they're making this film as, oh, like it's lighthearted, but you know, this is how the times are. But now we're in a position where like, you guys were all wrong, and that's horrible, and she is a child. And you know, so like now so like now it gives us an opportunity to show how things like were in fact back then. It's just that there's a difference between the way that it's being portrayed on camera versus like our modern, you know, selves nowadays.
That's very true. That's very true. I just can't get over like just the opening scene is this, because I was like, oh, this is really nice. I was kind of looking around going, it's a beautiful setting and stuff like that. Oh, it's set in France. I'm set in Paris, and like costumes are wonderful and all that. Oh, this guy looks really nice. What's his story? And then it's like, thank heaven for little girls. I'm like, Christ. He's supposed to be he's supposed to be like the cheeky sort of charming, like
narrator.
We're like, we like this guy. It's like, oh God.
And then they had that song later on with him and one of the older relatives of Gigi. Was it the aunt or the grand? I think it was the grandmother. Where they're talking about like he's like, oh, because they had a love affair. They were, you know, together, and then he's just, you know, he's like, well, I was falling in love with you, and I wanted to marry you, so that's why I had to cheat on you. And then she's like, okay, and it really shows how smart of a character she is, by the way, and really shows how like class she is. It's just the whole sort of like let an idiot talk, so a wise person can, you know, just listen sort of thing. And then he goes on after saying that to, well, I remember the last night that we were together. It was lovely. And then he sings a song where he's entirely wrong about every single recollection, she like very subtly corrects him. And he's like very, you know, very smiley. And for me, I was at first I was like, this dude's an idiot. And like, it is like really funny and you laugh at his expense. But at the same time, it does show that he's very much okay being wrong about like everything in that conversation.
That's true.
But on the other hand, that gives her character so much value about, you know, how classy she is and how she is, you know, how this fine, esteemed gentleman who's at the head of society is not the smartest person at the table.
I actually did forget it. I forgot about that song. I did actually really like that song. I do like, the thing is, there's moments of it I like, and I find charming and stuff like that. It's just kind of the whole plot itself, and like, and how it just rubs me the wrong way, and I only like being rubbed the right way. But for you, like, on the actual performances and stuff like that, was there any one in performance in particular that really stood out to you?
Well, Leslie, I thought it was a stellar performance. I thought it was solid. You know, I think she did very well with what she was given, for sure. I mean, I think that there was like a lot of, you know, like when she changes, right? She goes from this kind of young, little rebellious kind of class and training going on, and then there's like a flip where all of a sudden she's in this beautiful gown, and you know, she is now established and she has class and everything else. It was a very quick switch, which, you know, I didn't necessarily enjoy in terms of like the writing, because I thought that other stuff could have been cut out to see that journey a little bit more. But she made that switch and she killed it. And I thought that she really was able to show the juxtaposition between high class and just like a normal person who a person who just wants like a not the lavish life, who is very much okay, and she explains this to her love interest of being in a house in a country and playing some cards and not going to the Riviera and things of that nature. Not to mention she just brings a certain kind of like gentleness, and I hate to say this because it's so creepy in the film but she brings the innocence that kind of like elevates that storyline.
Yes, I look. The thing is, I have to give everyone credit in this film because they are very good performances. You believe everyone. It feels genuine. It's just the plot that's, but like the performances themselves, if you want to judge them on that alone, I think they're excellent. I would agree with you on that. I think Leslie Condon, who plays Gigi, is really really good. And there's only a couple of things that surprised me that this wasn't really a vehicle for her. She didn't go on to have she was a working actor for the rest of her life. I think she's still alive actually, and but like there was no one really from this movie that went on to be like a star, which is odd for a Best Picture winner. I think it might be because they're all French, bar herself. Well, she is French, but she's English accent, so she could have got away with it. But the rest of them are kind of like French established actors, so they all were successful in France and continue to be. So just not in the Western world, absolutely. And before we move on, do you have a standout scene and a standout song, or maybe they can be one and the same, or they can?
Well, definitely a standout song for me was again that back and forth between the honorable gentleman and again the grandmother, just while they were sitting at that table, kind of conversing between each other. I thought that one really, I love juxtaposition within films because I think that when you play something next to something else that's totally different, you see how each individual object or item or person or thing are so unique. And, it also like begs, questions of how is this dude of this status, and, can be this foolish, and it shows that she's of like lower status, but she's obviously an intelligent person and she's pretty witty as a character as well. So I thought that song and scene just did a lot for me. I think that was one of the more like valuable scenes in there, as well as the fact that they're both like very interesting characters, whether or not you like them or not. So it kind of gave them a moment to really kind of flesh out some details about them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that is your favorite song and your favorite scene all in the one?
I would have to say, I think so. Not like there aren't like a whole lot of other scenes really coming to mind. I think another scene that's I guess that I enjoyed a little bit was when Gigi is finally taken to out on the town with Gaston, and when he gets her the necklace, and he's a little bit shy about having her out, and you can see people in the background, and this is what I enjoyed about the scene was everyone else. Because it was very minimalist acting by Gaston and Gigi, which is kind of what you needed to be able to see people gossiping in the background and hearing noises which throw him off just a little bit. It really shows that he's a bit shaken, and that this is a new environment for Gigi, so it's not necessarily based off the two main characters in the scene, but what's going on around them, and it just showed like it showed more detail to the direction.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on the scenes you pointed out as well. I would say I was going to say my favorite song is I think it's Gossip. It's just when they're whispering. It's like, who is she? I like that bit. But it's hard for me to pick a favorite scene. But I will go with not like a good sneeze. Not like a good sneeze. Thank you. But my favorite scene would be like you said. I think it's the grandmother and her former lover, as they say, when they meet up after years, and he's saying how enamored he was by her and messing up everything. Like that for me is a lovely song that I'm surprised. I'm sure I probably have heard that in concerts or wherever, but if I was going to pick a song that would really stand out from this show, it would be that one.
Me too.
And now we can move on from talking about this movie. Well, of course, we have to discuss before we go on. It's Gigi somehow won Best Picture. I think in 1959, I think it was. But it was nominated alongside Andy Mame, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, The Defiant Ones, and Separate Tables. Rick, have you seen any of those other movies?
Um, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, but it's been a minute
Yeah.
since I've seen that. But I'm familiar with the play as well. And if recollection serves, I definitely enjoyed that more objectively
Yes.
and subjectively than Gigi. But I would have to go back and watch it, I guess, to really have an opinion on that.
I would say you don't. It's just a better movie. You're right.
Yeah.
All of those movies, all of those movies, I'm just going to take a wild shot in the dark, are better than Gigi. And a fun actual thing on Cat in a Hot Tin Roof. I live literally where I'm currently living in Sweden, in Stockholm, is like 2 seconds. Like I can see a beautiful theater from my apartment, and I don't know if it's because the theaters have been closed here for a really long time. The bars and everything are open, like life goes on, but there's no live theater. And
Mhm.
there's a Swedish production of Cat in a Hot Tin Roof
Oh,
in
really?
there. Yeah, well, I
Oh,
haven't looked it up, but I'm looking around going,
no,
that's all this. That I
that's
believe that this
awesome.
is yeah. So and it's I don't know if it's like if it's coming or if it
Mhm.
was on, if you know what I mean. And also
Yeah.
in the middle of town, another Best Picture. Well, it's a Best Picture winner. That was a Best Picture nominee. I was walking by the other day, and I think it's a musical. It's been adapted to a musical, but Rain Man, a Swedish production of a stage production of Rain Man, and I
Really?
think it's a musical just by the way it's pictured, like they have the
Huh.
cast photos in front, and then like it looks like they're breaking into dance or something like that,
I
or
I would be interested to see
very
that.
interested. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean there are zany moments in that film, so I guess
yeah.
like you could expand on those, but
But
I'd be interested to see how that translates to a
but as
live theater
well, yeah.
performance.
But also, is it a Swedish production? If you know what I mean, like I'm sure it'd be
Oh
Swedish
yeah,
dialogue or like Swedish songs. Is it just mainly Sweden that have they adopted this into a musical? Adapted it, I mean.
yeah.
So I if it does come out, if ever, we'll see what happens. I am interested in going to see it, but it'll most likely be in Swedish. But also, like, okay, I'll do it anyway. Um, but we keep going. Thank you so much, you handsome bastard, for
Oh,
putting
stop it.
Gigi on a very low third place, very low
Really
bronze medal.
interested how this podcast would go if I actually put her at number one. Just
Oh,
watching your face
yeah,
slowly drain as I say that third was this one and second was this one,
yeah.
and then I would really like to see your face when you finally were just like, oh no.
I wouldn't have made it. I would not have made it. It would have been the end of me live on YouTube. Um,
Yeah. On a
but
different timeline.
a different, yeah, a different timeline. There is a dead Joe somewhere. Um, So now we move to second place for the bracket 1957 to 1959. So Rick, Todd, Vanelli, Shepard, your silver medal goes to.
Around the world in 80 days.
Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you for being right. Around the world in 80 days, a Victorian Englishman bets that with the new steamships and railways, he can circumnavigate the globe in 80 days. It won 13 awards in film festivals around the world and nominated for a further five. It won a couple. How many? One, two, three, four, five Oscars at the Oscars that won Best Picture. Do you want to take a stab at any of them that they won?
Oh, let's see. I would say best director kind of comes to mind.
Nope.
Is cinematography in there?
Yes, cinematography,
I,
sir.
yeah, because
Okay.
some of those shots were pretty fucking
Beautiful.
cool.
Really
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you full marks for that one, and then I'll read out the rest. So you got cinematography, absolutely. It won Best Picture, obviously. Best writing screenplay, best writing, best screenplay adapted. James Poe, John Farrow, S.J. Perlman. Best cinematography, which is Lionel Linden. Best film editing, Jean Ruggiero, Paul Weathermax. Best music score of a dramatic or a comedy picture, Victor Young. This actually won posthumously. And the nominees: Best Director, Michael Anderson; Best Art Direction, and Set Decoration, James W. Sullivan; Ken Adam, and Ross Dowd; and Best Costume Design Color, Miles White. A couple of fun facts. David Niven always said that Phileas Fogg was his favorite role. The movie featured the longest closing credits sequence at the time at 6 minutes and 21 seconds. All of the credits are shown at the end. The title is the last credit. And interesting, I didn't realize this, the movie created the idea of cameo roles as a way to invite established stars to participate in a production. So that's a nice bit of fun trivia.
With Sinatra in there.
Yeah, Sinatra is the only one. I found out afterwards
cool.
Like there was loads of people cameoed. But like Sinatra had a really cool one where he was on the piano. I can't remember the song that was playing, but he turned around and it was him for like ages. It was like
it just
close up.
Flashed and it came in. It's just oh, there's Frank.
Yeah, it's still Frank. It was there. It felt like it was there for about 5 minutes. Had you? I'm going to presume you've heard of this movie before, but had you ever seen it? Do you have any past relationship with it?
I had never seen the original one. You know, there's the one with who is it? Kevin Kline? Is that who?
No,
Kevin Kline and
Steve Coogan and Jackie Chan.
Is it Steve Coogan? Okay, I saw that one when it came out when I was younger, and it was really zany. I mean, it was like an entertaining like kids movie sort of thing. You know, I am glad that I watched this one later in life, especially when my critical, film mind is more aged and I would say learned. Because I could definitely take like a lot away from this. Like, granted, it wasn't my favorite movie, but there are like a lot of things in here that are really cool. And
I do. I completely agree with you on that. I'd obviously, like same as you. I knew about I thought 2004 one when that came out ages and ages ago, and from what I remember, I somewhat enjoyed it. But then I had, especially at the time, it didn't get great reviews or anything because it's a completely different movie. Like this Around the World in 8 Days are taken super seriously. That was like a light family fun movie.
Yeah.
So I knew about that going into it. I knew about the what you call it, the hot air balloon. I thought that was more prevalent, if I'm being honest. I have to say, 3 hours is way too long. But as we were saying, really long. But as we were saying, with movies like in the 50s, and I think I brought this up before as well. Like obviously they're made differently, but also people who were watching these movies would not have the opportunity to go to the likes of India or likes of Spain even. So there were certain moments in it where they're really highlighting that part of the world and showing them stuff because that would have been the only time they could possibly ever stuff that went on for way too long, like the bullfighting scene, dull, so boring, way too long. But that would have been so many people's first time ever even hearing about that, and just seeing this bull attacking them, and it was a real bull, and having no concept of it whatsoever. But then on the counteract of that, okay, so that's a really boring scene that you from our modern eyes you feel should be cut. But then you go to the scene still in Spain, the dancing scene, the performance scene, and you're like, that is absolutely beautiful. It has no kind of need to be in this movie. What's there for other than to be a bit of entertainment, but also it shows people, because what I love as well, that they crash in Spain in the most stereotypical Spanish town in history. Everyone's just Spanish and ready to party. And when they show that scene, when they show that in its full, that performance scene, I was just going, this is amazing. This is amazing. So they went everywhere they did. Yeah, they highlighted moments. Some definitely could cut it down, but I think that's for the benefit of people seeing the world who would never have gotten the opportunity to see the world before.
Yeah, that's one of the cooler things about this movie is, like you said, it's presenting different skill sets and different kind of environments in a very short amount of time. Because when you hear Around the World in 80 Days, and you have the protagonist doing just that. Objectively, when I think about it, 3 hours to showcase a movie where somebody's apparently going around the world and the entire movie takes place within 80 days isn't too bad. It's just, the fact that some of the scenes were a bit elongated. But that being said, like bullfighting and the dancing or the elephants or things of that nature, people really would have never seen anything like that. And, we're just so spoiled now because if we want to see anything like that, we literally take 5 seconds to go and look something like that up. But I'm sure that at the time when that stuff was coming out, people were probably losing their minds a little bit where they wanted to live in that moment just as much as possible. It's just it's like a lot of films for us nowadays when there's like a scene or a moment that we just want to last forever and then it gets cut too short. I think that if this was shorter than 3 hours, a lot of people would have kind of felt robbed about some of these scenes a little bit.
I think that a beautiful point. Genuinely, 100%. there was actually I had something in my mind I was going to say to you about it. Oh, you said elephants. You said, oh yeah. What are your thoughts on the very opening scene when as
Oh,
in like the guy, like the very 1950s American. Sorry, that was a
yeah,
British accent. Sorry,
yeah.
but
The trip to the moon scene.
yeah, I was like, I really enjoyed it, but I was like, this is
Hmm.
what are your thoughts into why that was put in?
Um, so I had seen Trip to the Moon before. I saw
Mm,
that first when I was in high school, just because that's when I started taking film classes, and that was just kind of one of the intro of like, look how we're starting in film, and look where the beginnings are. I'm not. I think that it's interesting when people put things in intro, like the introduction into a movie that isn't necessarily playing such a huge
mm,
part in the movie. So
mm,
questions that I have is obviously A, how does this connect to the movie? B, was there any sort of underlying agenda here? Like, I'm not too sure about this. I didn't put too much thought into it, but like, was there some sort of underlying agenda by putting it in here? Maybe to show, like, and it could be something as simple as showing the audience, a creative way of saying, here's where technology was. And instead of
yeah.
telling you how technology was at one point or what we thought we were capable of, we're actually going to show you an older film than the film we're about to show you now. And it could have been great foresight to the fact that somebody at some point thought there's going to be people watching this film for decades to
Mm,
come. And wouldn't it be cool if they were watching a film from 50 years ago that we were watching, that we put in a film from like 60
mm.
years ago, to kind of create a lot of different levels of viewing in that sense. So it wasn't, I kind of just sat through it. I was just like, oh, this is interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
I know this, and you're kind of tying it into this, but it was one of those like, all right,
What are we going
when
on
are we
here?
getting,
Yeah.
when are we getting started here, sort of moment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought it was absolutely bizarre because I'd never seen that. I don't think I've ever seen it in a film before,
Hmm.
unless it was something mocking that,
It's
but
wacky. It's
yeah, it
wacky.
was very. The whole film is so wacky as well. I want to touch on David Niven's character in a moment, but like stuff that just sort of happened. For example, like
Hmm.
they're on the train and this guy comes over and insults them for playing Whisk or whatever the game is called. And then he's
Hmm.
like, You've insulted us for the last time, sir. I challenge you to a duel. And then they just have a duel. And you're like, what
Yep.
the fuck? That was
Just right
just
there on the train.
yeah,
Yeah.
just happened. Just happened. But on David Niven's character, obviously Phileas Fogg, I'm in some ways fascinated by him. I'm find him interesting, but like I did not like him at all. He was just a very uptight British man who was
Hmm.
always right. And I don't like British people who are always right. I like British people who will accept that yes, they have done awful things in the past, and that's just a fact. But like some British people who are always right are just arseholes. So
Hmm.
so what are your thoughts on the actual performance and where
Yeah.
did you want him to succeed?
I did want him to succeed. Just one of the bigger moments for that too is just because although all the guys at the Gentlemen's Club, the gentlemen members, they were so pompous and pretentious, and Fogg was just the antithesis to them. And it wasn't necessarily that I like really enjoyed Fogg. It was just the fact that I really didn't enjoy the other guys betting against him. So it wasn't necessarily like I want him to win because I want him to get the money. It was like I want him to win because I want the other guys to lose. And
That's fair. That's fair.
and I think that at the end of the day, we did get to see a moment of failure from Fogg. Because there
Mm,
was the point in time where he thought that he did lose the bet.
mm,
And we did get to kind of see a sneak preview of him dealing with that failure. It was a lot more subtle than I think people nowadays would have wanted. I think it was more fitting the fact that he didn't lose his mind. I don't think that would have been so true to the character. But we did get to see failures within the journey of success. I think
mm.
that as much of the time that he was right, there were enough instances of him, or not him being wrong, but the world kind of taking his plan and throwing it out the window,
Hmm.
to make it feel realistic. Because it would have been so annoying if he just was able to overcome every single boundary. And plus, like, I
Sure.
think that something that also adds to that film as well that you just have to accept is the amount of ex machina that comes into play, where it's just like,
Yeah.
got saved again, got
Yeah.
saved again. Okay, one more
Yeah.
time. Like the amount of like times where things could have totally got screwed up, but for
Yeah.
some amazing reason they didn't, or by some stroke of luck they didn't.
Mm.
So I think that played a nice role of kind of just keeping the film more positive. I want to say, where it was
Yeah.
just somebody else was looking after Fog other than himself.
Yeah, it kept it kind of whimsical, It kept it
Mm-hmm.
kind of, yeah, which was nice, And like, I don't have a problem with this film. Like I said to you, I think it's good, but I just think it's far. But I'm trying to look at it through the eyes of when it was released. It was definitely
Yeah.
game changing for everyone. I can understand that, and it's definitely not as boring as longer films that have come up, like
Mm-hmm.
a lot more recent than this. But it also has, I have to say, when this line happened, I was sure. I was like, oh, I know this was brought up as being like one of the just great lines. It's like the last thing they said in the whole film. It's there can't be a woman in the gentleman's club, and they're like, why not? And he's like, well, it'll be the fall of the British Empire as we know it. Or something
Yeah.
like that. It's not a direct quote. I was like, that's so
Yeah.
good. It's very witty, very kind of very on the nose.
Yeah, and that was the
Um,
other thing too. Is I think that they were a bit creative in the sense where it was very much a film where it was like, all right, look at us,
yeah,
like look at us.
yeah,
But it seemed like there was at least one person or a handful of people that were like, that's cool, but we still need to kind of like bring ourselves down just a little bit, or we need to poke
yes,
fun just a little bit. Because you're right in that line, like that spoke volumes. Where that
yeah,
made me laugh out loud because it like rang so true, and it was
yeah.
just like, yeah, why the hell can't
Why?
they? And then yeah, and then like it's and if you want to get deeper with it, it's the whole like because we love the patriarchy sort of
Yes,
idea.
yeah,
And having and being all inclusive will crumble that. So like those kind of instances were definitely like heartwarming within a film that
yes.
was very much like, look at us.
Yeah, yeah. Another interesting thing as well. I could be wrong. I could be, but I think they were very good at having people of nationalities playing. Well, nationalities, because
Mm-hmm.
the interesting thing about Passport Two, in the book Around the World in 80 Days, he's actually a French person. But I don't think we ever found out his nationality. I believe he's Spanish, or he could be Mexican, or
Mm-hmm.
or, or something like that, or South American. But he was played by someone of that nationality. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And
Yeah.
and same in Spain. There were great respect to Spain. Now India is usually where they just decide to not be sound anymore. Like, so I can't remember
The amount
100%.
of the amount of makeup applied to extras in that scene was
Yeah,
very heavy.
yeah. I don't think it kind of lost its way a little bit there. But for the fact that they actually, at the
I
same
mean, the
time.
princess also, I
Oh
mean that.
Jesus! Oh, sorry. Actually,
Yeah, no,
sorry. Take away my comment. Yeah, that's just not. Sorry. Yes. Okay, that's another example because it's the same in Lawrence of Arabia. Discard everything I just said there, bar the
no,
fact that
no, because
Passport Two
no.
was.
To your to
Yeah,
your point, like they did do very well, especially like in the Spanish, kind of
yeah,
like dance scene. It seems like they had a
yeah,
lot of people who were indigenous to that part of the world.
yeah.
But it was just one of those things where I think like the princess, because I actually had to go back and kind of like rewatch and figure out like, okay, is she supposed to be Indian, or because
Yeah.
she was Indian, and then she was like went around with all these different guys, and then she went back to India, and she went to England for education, but she was supposed to be Indian, I guess. So it was just one of those that was just so not out of the norm at that point where it just didn't
Yeah.
matter. But immediately, like to us, even though that's the circumstance in the film, it's just so out of place and so it's screwed up
Yeah.
that was the case. That we're all like it almost is confusing to like modern day minds where we're like, okay, I think that's what's going on, but like, wait, like really? And that's one of those things
Yeah.
where you just have to kind of like take a back seat, in terms of viewing it from the eyes of somebody in the 50s, because at that point that was the standard. But now
Yeah.
it's just like, ugh.
Yeah. With the oh yeah, one thing that confused me actually, and maybe you can help me on it. Do you know a guy that got Passport Two drunk and then sent him to Japan and stuff like that, and he was there to kind of sabotage the mission?
Yeah.
Why was he still hanging around when Passport 2 was back and told them that he was there to sabotage him? Like, he was just still there. I did not understand that whatsoever. Was there like a line I missed or something that he just still stuck around with? Because
I
like,
think I think from like a structural standpoint, it was kind of one of those, let's keep this element of the movie alive, because there's only so much that the guys back in England can do,
yeah,
or in England can do to disrupt
yeah,
that whole journey. And there's only so much, or apparently to them, there's only so much that the world can do to naturally come in between
mm,
Fog and his journey. So I think structurally, it kind of just like added a little bit of an
mm,
element of like destruction and obstruction with like kind of like a joyful and foolish twist on it. But
yeah,
I will say, in terms of for the plot, my only thing was, okay, well, once he's out of British jurisdiction, you can't arrest the man or charge the man. So at this point, he's just trying to screw them up beyond,
yeah.
belief. Like, he's just going to try to get in the way, dropping his
Mm.
title of, whatever agency he's from, and more just like, I'm an asshole.
Yeah, I agree. Before we move on to your standout scene, or standout moment, who would you say is your standout performer in this?
um, I would have to say, and I don't know how to pronounce the actor's name who played Passport 2.
Yeah.
Um, but that actor in particular, just because he was so versatile,
Yes.
we
Very
love
physical. Yeah.
very physical.
Yeah.
We love to see versatility. We love, personally, I really enjoy subtlety as well. And he was just all over
Mm.
the spectrum. And he seems like if I was working with that guy, he would seem like somebody to get direction. And he's like, cool, like, let's do it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And his just element, of again, like, innocence. Like, it's nice to see like innocence within characters, and innocence not in the sense of like juvenile, but innocence in the way of, you could tell he wasn't too well traveled. Like when they were in India and he started trying to bullfight the sacred cow, and like he had like a whole mob of like people chasing after him. Like, that was just one of
Yeah.
those like, oh no, you have no idea what you're doing. But like, it was came from a gentle nature. So it was
Yeah.
like, as messed up as it was, from an audience standpoint,
Yeah.
it can definitely be redeemable.
Yeah, I love the moment when he becomes like a success in Japan, and he's part of like and
Yeah,
I
where
don't
he
know,
slides
yeah.
down.
And then just like, yeah, and then Passport 2 is like, Master! And then he jumps out of like the hole and everything falls apart, and he's just like,
Yeah,
yay, let's get out of here. I did like that.
yeah, he's just like, screw it. Like,
So for you then, what is your standout scene or moment from this?
uh, I would say I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed. Honestly, it was a bit much for me, but
Mm.
something that I appreciated about the bullfighting scene was just how much effort that probably took to orchestrate. And
Yeah,
that was one of those moments where it was like, this is a bit too long for me. However,
yeah.
I really appreciated every single element that came into play during that scene, between like the people and the fact that they were, actually bullfighting. I mean, that's like excluding the fact that, at that point, they probably didn't care too much about animal rights, and
Yeah.
having them on set. So disregarding that, just the pure, I wonder how hard it was to put that together, sort of deal. Because those are the spectacle scenes again, where they're like, look at all these people. Like, this is a different culture that a lot of people probably haven't been to. And
Yeah.
that scene in particular probably was one of the more highlighted parts for audience members at that time.
I would completely, for people at the time, I would completely agree with you that that like obviously it was a full stadium as well, and getting that the thought, getting to experience that in some way, the awe of what that is, whether you agree
Mm-hmm.
with bullfighting or not, it's obviously a huge or was a huge part of Spain's culture. But for me, that's too fucking dull.
It
Even
was
I
very,
respect, yeah, I respect
it
where
was
you're coming
very
from,
dull.
and yeah, completely respect where you're coming from. But I have to go for something a bit more sexy. So I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
go. No, I'd say well a bit more sexy. The Spanish like dance sequence for me is just exceptional and just
Yeah.
really incredibly well shot and put together. But
Yes.
for me, it's just a moment. It's the last scene. It's well, this will be a fall of the British Empire as we know it, or whatever the line is. That for me, it stuck with me, and it kind of really kind of has a lovely full stop on the bullshit of that society and everything.
Yeah,
But
it was a really good way to cap off like a long drawn out movie.
yes, a very, very long drawn out movie. But Around the World in 80 Days was gold medal, even though it's silver medal in this one. It was nominated alongside Friendly Persuasions, Giant, The King and I, and The Ten Commandments. Have you seen any of those films, first of all?
I'm familiar with The King and I, but I haven't
Yes.
viewed those films.
The King and I saw it years ago. Great film, really, really great film. And Giant is actually James Dean's last ever performance. He was nominated posthumously for an Oscar for Best Actor. 24 years old. Haven't actually seen it. It's on. I wish it won Best Picture because I would have preferred to watch it than this one. But here we are, and apparently it's truly, truly exceptional. So, from what I know, Giant is a wonderful film. The King and I. Yul Brynner won Best Actor for his performance in The King and I. I would love to see that as well to compare it to what you call it to Giant's performance. But so I'm going to say Giant should have won it just out of purely I wish I got to see it. And The Ten Commandments it's another fucking vehicle of Charlton Heston just being isn't God great and I'm gonna die him. No, you're not, Charlton. Well, you could be. I don't know. But this has been exceptional so far. And just so I can have a little bit less editing going forward, guys, next week my guest is film actor and stage actor as well, an all-round wonderful human being, Morgan Jones. We will be discussing, and I'll be listening to Morgan rank From Here to Eternity, On the Waterfront, and Marty. So make sure to subscribe, do all the wonderful things, and to not miss that episode. And we go to the gold medal now. The one, thank you at Real Rick Shepherd for choosing this film. Genuinely, you have saved everything. You have saved my love for humanity by putting this number one. So Rick, for the bracket 1957 to 1959, the gold medal goes to
Bridge on the River Kwai.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bridge on the River Kwai. British POWs are forced to build a railway bridge across the River Kwai for their Japanese captors, not knowing that the Allied forces are planning to destroy it. It won 100. Sorry, that's a lie. It won 30 awards in film festivals around the world, nominated for a further 8. It is ranked 100 and sorry, I have the little here. No, I don't. There it is. 167th on the IMDb top 250. And do you want to take a stab at any of the Oscars that it won?
Okay. Best cinematography, I would say.
Yes.
Did he get a Best Actor award for that?
Yeah. Who? Alec Guinness?
I'm between Guinness and Holden because they both did so well. I want to say Holden because I really enjoyed his performance, but Guinness, if he was considered a Best Supporting, I would think that he would probably get that one.
Well, I'll say that Alec Guinness was nominated and won for Best Actor in a Leading Role.
For Best Actor in a Leading Role.
And William Holding wasn't even nominated.
Really, I really enjoyed his performance. Maybe I was just kind of. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's just one of those like personal tastes, but I really enjoyed his performance. And Guinness was class too.
I completely agree with you. And then Best Director David Lean, Best Writing Screenplay based on material from another medium, Pierre Boulez, Carl Foreman, Michael Wilson. Best Cinematography, Jack Hildyard, or whatever that is. Good name. Best Film Editing, Peter Taylor. Best Music Scoring, Malcolm Arnold. And nominated, Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Susie Nakahara. And then a couple of fun facts. Initially, Sir Alec Guinness had doubts about playing the role of General Nicholson. Guinness had become a much-loved figure on screen, appearing in a series of popular comedies. The Nicholson character seemed humorless, unlovable, and perhaps even dull. To remedy this, Guinness tried to inject some humor into the portrayal of the Colonel. Director Sir David Lean was very much opposed to the idea, insisting that it should be played straight. Thus began an argument between the two men that continued through shooting. At one point during the filming, director Sir David Lean nearly drowned when he was swept away by a river current. Actor Jeffrey Horn saved his life. And a fun fact, Jeffrey Horn was a teacher in Lee Strasberg film studio when I was there. And I
Oh,
completely
really?
forgot. Completely forgot that he was in this until someone reminded me. This was like I knew he was in this, but I'd never seen the movie. And
Awesome.
Colonel Saito was inspired by Major Rizaburo Saito, who, unlike the character portrayed in the movie, was said to by some to be the most reasonable and humane of all the Japanese officers, usually willing to negotiate with POWs in return for the labor, such as respect between Saito and Lieutenant Colonel Tusi, upon whom Colonel Nicholson was based. That Tusi spoke up on Saito's behalf at War Crimes Tribunal after the war, saving him from the gallows. 10 years after Tusi's death in 1975, Saito made a pilgrimage to England to visit his grave. Very, very interesting. And very interesting that that's not really shown in the film at all. It showed that there was respect, but he was shown to be I guess, a cowardice man who, feared what would come to him. But we'll touch
Yeah.
on that when we go into actually break down the movie. But had you ever seen this movie before? Heard about it?
I haven't. I definitely heard about how I've heard about it many, many times.
Mm,
But yeah, like I said, it was kind of on that list of I'll get to it eventually, just so I can,
yeah,
see what I think about it, see what other people kind of think about it.
yeah,
But I'm glad I watched it. I honestly really enjoyed this, and this is going to
yeah.
be a recommendation for like a lot of people going forward. I honestly wish I had somebody come up to me sooner and tell me like, "Hey, you're a cinephile. What the hell? Why haven't you seen
Yeah,
this yet?"
yeah, yeah. I was genuinely blown away by this movie. It is
Mm-hmm.
exceptional. It's long. It's 2.5 hours, but it's like long in a way, like Lord of the Rings will say is long, where you just want more of it. You want more
Yeah.
information. You love every second of it. You're hooked, and especially for a film made back then, which is a lot about we'll say long shots, and a lot about taking in the scenery, taking in the environment. That's there and that's present too, but it feels so natural. It feels so true to the story. So I absolutely adore this movie. And even though it's about British soldiers being, aren't we great? We're British. We don't back down. We're officers. We don't work
Yeah.
with the men. I'm like, I get it. I get why
Yeah.
they're and what they're going through. It's not just for being an officer. It's not just like I want to. I'm standing against
Mm-hmm.
this because I'm not working with the common folk. It's because they need the hierarchy, because if the hierarchy isn't there within it, if they don't feel like they're part, and he says it in it, if they don't feel like they're fighting for something, and everyone's that it
Yeah.
falls apart, then the men
Yeah.
will lose faith and they'll become slaves. If they don't feel like they're part of an army,
Mm-hmm.
if they're soldiers, they will be slaves. So I found that very, very interesting, and
Yeah.
the fact they got me inside is huge.
Yeah, and it gave the opportunity to show the faults with that as well.
Mm,
100%. They need to be part of an army instead of being slaves in order to live, to have
mm,
to live through that. But then you have Shears who's just like, yeah, but they won't be able to live if
yeah.
like they're not going to be able to use the mentality to live if they get shot because they're not going to work.
Mm,
It really shows, and it also was part of the whole. It says here in the Geneva Convention that you can't do this, and then he's just like, like fuck the Geneva Convention,
yeah, yeah,
and it really showed the realism of that situation. And I'm not, yeah, I honestly just really like the fact that it really gave an opportunity to show the differences between not only like the cultures but the situation at hand as well, and
yeah.
how that can affect somebody life or death. And that's like the other emphasis that they put on it, or that Shears is there kind of echoing, which is like, hey man, you're a POW,
That's
at
it.
the end of the
Yeah.
day, like, and they line up the machine gun literally at the officers. Luckily for them, they didn't shoot, but it does definitely have like a game of tug of war going back and forth.
I completely agree with you. It was a truly fascinating watch, and then you saw him like his descent, we can call it, into madness,
Yeah.
where they put the work in to build the bridge, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and don't forget, like it's a kind of a somewhat thrown away line that the officers work as well
Yeah.
on the bridge to get it done,
Well,
because
he
uh,
compromised his values because he's just like, we
yeah,
need, even the officers are now, going to work on the bridge. And it was awesome the fact that they had placed a bookmark in the hole. The officers are not going to work. And
yeah,
then later on, he completely compromises, his morals in
mm,
that, stern stance that he had, where now
yeah,
it's, Well, of course, the officer, and he plays it off as a very fine, established British gentleman of like, well, they
Yeah.
would be happy to volunteer, and they make me proud and everything else, and it's just linguistically kind of hides, that whole,
Yeah.
like you said, descent into madness.
Yeah. And then you have him sending people that are in sick bay to
Yep,
work as well.
yep,
And like, why do this? Like, I understand that the point is like he's obviously he needs that structure because he even says it later on that what wasn't worth it, like he's been an officer for his entire life. He's well not an officer but in the army his entire life, and
hmm
then it's all coming to an end sooner than later. And
yeah, yeah, and then of course, what happens with the wire at the end with the bridge. It's just
Jesus,
one of
so
those,
intense.
like, it really shows how deep into it he was, and it also shows, you know how ingrained somebody can become in a situation when they're living when that's all that they have. And it's one of those, it sucks that he had to get wrapped up in this. But at
Mm.
the same time, I mean, it's your classic hubris as well. I mean, that bridge was, he said, I've been in the military for 22 years, I think it was, and it's been a good life. But when I heard that and I saw that scene, it was like, this guy probably thinks that this bridge is like, his thing. Like, this will be
Yeah,
his
yeah,
legacy. He even nails up the board,
that's right.
that says like built by British, and he gives that rousing speech towards the middle of the film where he's just like, they need to know what British engineering is about and all this
Mm.
stuff. And then on the other hand, you have his officer who has the mindset of, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
You realize that when
Yes.
we build this, they're gonna be transporting goods. Like, this is a vital bridge to their strategy. And
Yeah.
it seems like, he's also the type of guy who would have thought about, okay, well, we need to misplace like something here or there. And it begs the question of, when the bridge wasn't getting put up originally, was it A, they really didn't know what they were doing, B, they didn't want to do it because they were aware that that was going to contribute to an enemy force,
Mm.
or C, just kind of like a cultivation of both, or like a mixture of both.
Yeah. But why do you think that he actually made the decision? Because, okay, there's no point he went, I'm going to be working for the Japanese now. But what point is it that he kind of crossed over from, well, we're going to do a good job, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to show them what British work is, to like literally, like to getting so past that point of no return that he will stop it from being blown up. Like go against his entire gut, his entire upbringing, his entire life is dedicated to the British Army, and he just
Yeah.
turned against them, and it felt
hmm
completely natural. But do you think there was a point where it turned?
Um, I think that it was. I honestly think that it was a little bit of regaining status. Because
Mm.
he came in as the colonel, and
Yes.
then when the book was thrown away and his stick was snapped and he was slapped in the face, he was no longer a colonel. He was a prisoner of war.
Mm.
And then he kind of negotiated with the commanding officer of that camp in terms of like, I want my status back and I want purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as long as you give me that, and I'll do this. And I don't think it was necessarily that much of like a conscious decision, but once he started, because the guy was driving in trucks, like, he wasn't doing labor. His officers weren't doing labor. I mean, it
Mm.
was very easy to see that he fell into playing the part of colonel, but under a different command.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
that it's almost like he would have rather been a commanding officer, for a different army at that point, rather than being a prisoner of war who does labor.
It's so fascinating. It's so like it really is a wonderful performance as well. But this is kind of a film of two stories as well. It mentions in the
hmm
synopsis because you have the bridge being built, and then you have them wanting to destroy the bridge. That
Yeah.
and the travel to get to that. So, what did you feel for that story? And that's also led by is it William Holden? It was that plays the
You talking about Shears?
oh Shears. Sorry, Shears. That's played by Jack Hawkins, isn't it? Or am I getting people?
Holden.
Oh, Holden, sorry, yes. But
hmm
that story, because obviously he's not anyone. He was lying about being an American officer, or Navy, whatever it was, a Navy officer. So he thought
hmm
he'd be treated better. But then he's not, and he gets found out, but he's sent back anyway. And that journey, yeah. What are your thoughts on that journey?
I enjoyed it. I think that there was difficulty with what was going on. I think that it's the I like stereotypical arcs as long as they're done with taste. And I think that, I mean this in a positive way, it was a stereotypical arc of leading character who has selfish intentions, but at the same time, kind of there's some justification behind those selfish intentions.
Mm.
He was a prisoner of war. He was impersonating an officer, but he did it to survive. And then he survived and escaped. And then, of course, when he escaped, he didn't want to go back. However, um, you know, he had to go. Well, at the bottom line, he had to go back. He found that out after they kind of gave him the opportunity to like volunteer to go back. But there's negotiating there of like, okay, well, you actually get the rank of major while you're in here, as well as the fact that we do need your help, as well as the fact that you have to come with us because this is your job now. So it's kind of one of those like, we're gonna take you kicking and screaming, but then along the lines, you see that character, turn their head a little bit and go down the path of being the hero protagonist, or at least
yeah. There's it was such an interesting the turn that the two characters had, because obviously Alec Guinness becomes the enemy, I guess. But he becomes feels like he's an officer in the Japanese army, while Shears becomes the tragic hero who sacrifices his own life to get the mission to come to an end, to get the mission completed. So like it was a beautiful, like, to use a wrestling terminology, a beautiful face turn. And executed perfectly. And again, the whole thing about this film, every part of it felt organic, every part of it felt real, and it's like a lot of that got out to David Lean's exceptional directing, because I've always heard about him as a director, but I'm not even sure what films I'd seen. But this was an absolute classic.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So we go to the part. Okay, we'll go. I think I know what the answer is, but who's your standout performer?
Holden, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. He has so much ease, and it is very much a classical, like, I'm a leading man. Yes. But the thing is that we don't necessarily get to see that too much very often, anymore. I mean, I think that there are people who do that. I think that, in terms of like modern actors who do that very well, Fassbender does that very well. He's very classic with his like, leading man kind of type. I think that Holden really he was matter of fact. He has a very nice, deep voice. He's very clear when he speaks, and he does a very nice job of delivering, a plethora of emotions, but still having no pun intended, the same character.
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of actors, for both good and bad, who of course change. The character changes throughout the progression of the film. But I feel like there are certain actors who change the character too much, right? It's like what we talked about in Gigi, when there was that whole flip from being young trainee to established lady. It's just, she played that very well, but there really wasn't a lot of development between the character from point A to point B. So you saw the switch very hard. And, Guinness does a very good job of this as well, where you don't see them complete, like, out in your face switch. Right. You don't see Holden say like, I'm the hero now, so that way when he does what he does at the end of the movie, it comes as a surprise. Or, for instance, Guinness, when he does what he does at the end of the movie, about like the wire and finishing the bridge and everything else, it comes as a surprise, because you don't think, oh, this guy's going to turn into a villain, or, oh, this guy's going to turn into a hero. It's just, it gets to a point where you're like, oh my God, is this guy a villain? Or like, oh my God, is this guy going to be a hero? And I think it was awesome. And I think that these two guys really just it was astounding to watch those two in those roles.
I could agree with you. For me, Alec Guinness, it would be my standout, and I just everything he went through, you felt it. And then when the, like I said, the face turn happens, you're hooked in, and it almost hurts you. But for standout performance, yes. But for standout scene or standout moment, what would you go for?
I really did enjoy the last kind of firefight in the end of the movie, just because that was like some cool, heavy action paced, and there was a lot of tension building with like, when's the train coming, and he's following the wire, and is he gonna blow it? And that character has had this whole question being begged of, can you kill without hesitation? So is he going to kill when he's discovered? Like, you have all these questions going on. It's either going to be that one or the first scene where you see Holden, where he's digging graves, because I think that sets a standard that characters are expendable. I mean, you get that with the guy he's digging graves with, 20, 30 minutes later in the film. And it shows, again, how expendable characters are. And I love that as like a horror movie nerd. Like, that's something that, I think that when you make the characters expendable, it gives them so much value, and it makes you actually legitimately miss them, or, hurt, when they're killed. So the fact that was like foreshadowing, not only where his character ends up and the guy that he's digging the graves next to, but also like it reminds you about the severity of the situation, because at the end of the day, it is a prisoner of war camp. People die. A lot of people died in very horrible and gruesome ways. And they do a nice job establishing that without necessarily making it the whole movie about that. So it was either going to be like that one of the first scenes, or it's going to be that ending one.
Okay, but pick one, because
it's got to be the first one for me. It's got to be the first one for me.
Yeah, I think you're going to go with that one. For me, the standout scene or standout moment is Alec Guinness's Nicholson when he's in the hot box, and they give him like 2 minutes to speak to like your man, to give him stuff and to pitch him that of going to work, and he's refusing, and he's trying to bring it down to a human level.
Yeah,
but he just can't do it. And even when he goes into I like in the room as well, when he's offering him food and drink, and he can barely stand, but he's not taking it. So but I'm going to go for the actual hot box, because I thought that was very visceral, and you could really, really feel it.
Yeah, it's those scenes where you're, again, one of the most important things about movies is that you believe it. Whether or not it's the script or the acting or the character, but that scene really emphasized that it was believable, because that's how something like that would have played out, at least in my mind. If it was approached a different way, I might be like, I'm not really buying this. But again, because it was like so visceral to the audience member, it's like, I'm too kind of like into this to really, worry if I'm buying it, because I'm buying it so much that I'm not worried about it, sort of thing.
Yeah, I completely get you. And then the bridge on the River Kwai is the gold medal winner for the bracket 1957 to 1959. It was also gold medal when it won Best Picture. It was but did it deserve to? It was nominated alongside Witness for the Prosecution, Sayonara, or Sayonara, I presume it might be, Peyton Place, and a big one, 12 Angry Men. So I don't know what films you've seen there. I have a feeling you might have seen 12 Angry Men, because that's kind of like a go-to for like every film screenwriting class and everything. So I still think it wins. Yeah.
I still think it wins. It's 12 Angry Men I saw that when I was in high school, again, like beginning film courses. And as good as it is, and as much of a like staple it is in cinema history, this was just one of those films that I felt good after watching it. Like, obviously with like the storyline, it doesn't necessarily make you feel great, especially like more towards what happens at the end of the movie. But it was a movie that I was just so satisfied with. And even being like, I didn't even want to be really critical of it, because like I really did enjoy it like a good amount. So I would have to say, just like based off my bias, not even like objectively, that I'm glad I won.
Oh yeah, okay, that's fair enough. I think I haven't seen 12 Angry Men in a good while, but I think it's one of the most like incredibly beautiful movies ever put on screen. So I think it's tough. I think it's very different. I think I would go for 12 Angry Men, just out of pure like it's just it's all set in one room. 12 obviously 12 Angry Men, 12 people, and all the turns, everything that happened in it, and what you learn, and it's so subtle in its dialogue as well. And no one has names, of course, until one person at the very end.
It's the whole difference in movies, sort of like, does one, you have this giant spectacle through the jungle versus, this one that takes place in a pretty minimalistic spot. I mean, and this is coming from a guy who Reservoir Dogs is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
So I can definitely appreciate that.
Absolutely. But I still love a Bridge on the River Kwai. But for me, I think 12 Angry Men probably should have won. But that is our show. with the real Rick Shepherd. Thank you for being a genuinely perfect, wonderful human being, as you always are. Before we tell the guys what you've got coming up and where they can find it and everything, have you got any film recommendations for the lovely people?
Yes. So Bong Joon-ho is one of my favorite directors. I absolutely love his flicks. And one of my favorite movies is Memories of Murder.
Cool.
I think it was released in 2007, I believe. It was either that or 2003. I'm not too sure offhand. But I watched a lot of him the past several years, and that film, he's so good at what he does. He's one of those guys that's so good at what he does that he can just add in like little bits of flair. Like he just has he has this thing where he has characters drop kick each other like all the time, and it's so funny because he'll just like add them in these very spontaneous moments of people just drop kicking each other, and it can be in like a super serious scene. But because he builds his films so well and so masterfully, those kind of zany moments, they're hilarious. And I think that Memories of Murder does a very good job of taking a very serious plot and adding in some of the most creative characters I've ever seen on screen, together. It's one of those movies where you're like, wow. The fact that it's kind of like Tiger King in the sense where you look at that world and you're like, what are the chances that all these zany people are in the same spot? Like and that's what makes good cinema. And that's what made Tiger King such an enjoyable thing for people to watch, is because it was just, a culmination of just these people you would meet once in a lifetime, let alone have like 5 or 6 of them in the same, environment.
Yeah. I love any reference to Tiger King. Exceptional stuff there. Exceptional stuff there. Great film. I've never actually heard of it or seen it, but everyone make sure to check it out. I'll always recommend In Bruges. Oh, you got more? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, no, I was just going to say, if you do watch that, just go online and do some research about one of the last lines said. There's a line that is said into the camera. And you find out later why that line was like delivered the way it was, and it was something outside of the film. It was something more than the film. Bong Joon-ho, I guess, had a message that he really wanted to get out to the world for somebody to see, and it's just like really, it's a really cool twist on a movie that makes it more than cinema.
It's very interesting. So before you head off, where can people find you, and have you got anything coming up that you would like them to check out?
Yeah, so best place to find me is on my Instagram at Real Rick Shepherd. Like I mentioned earlier, we're coming out with this short. In the next hopefully couple months, we have to kind of figure out how, if we can release certain parts of it, just since we're pitching it to networks and different streaming services and whatnot. But you can actually find the press release for that show. It's called The Daughter, and I have a link in my bio in my Instagram. And we have an interview with myself and my co-creator, Sarang Sharma. And you can find him on Instagram as well. And then we have our teaser. And then we're also constantly coming out with content from our production company, Are We Rolling Yet? Pictures, Productions, RY, AY, RI, however you want to pronounce it. And yeah. So you can find us through my Instagram as well with my other partner, Jared Harper and Albert Percy.
Perfect. And it'll all be in the show notes, so you can find direct links to it there. Rick, thanks so much for being an exceptional guest, an exceptional human being. Finally, we got to do this for the second time. This time it's recorded. It's live on YouTube, so there's no losing it now. And thanks so much. And guys, like I said earlier on, meet us back here next Monday, where it'll be just audio platform. It's just practice out this time, but with actor Morgan Jones, where we'll be discussing From Here to Eternity, On the Waterfront, and Marty. So we'll see you back there then. Thanks again, Rick, and look forward to everything you got coming in the future.
Hey, I appreciate you, Joe. Thanks so much, man. We'll talk soon.
Beautiful.